3 years ago, a man barged into my room. After one reckless night, he said he would take responsibility, but I still called the police. Later, he went to prison, and I suffer nightmares for 3 years. 3 years later, I met Tang Shen, who helped me out of my gloom, and we fell in love. The day I found out I was pregnant, I was overjoyed and wanted to surprise him, but then I overheard him saying to someone else, Feng Yan was my brother. She got him thrown into prison, and he lost his life. So, I won't let her off. When she's completely in love with me, I'll personally send her to hell, make her pay with her life. Liang Fengyan was the man who had barged into my room that year, so I chose to leave first, deliberately leaving behind that pregnancy test report. Later, I heard that the usually composed Tang Shen scoured the world searching for his pregnant wife. When I found out I was pregnant, I was truly happy. Holding the pregnancy test report in my hand, I went straight to Tang Shen's company, wanting to share the good news with him in person. Tang Shen had once said he wanted us to have a daughter. The family of 3 was filled with joy. He would be a good father and certainly a good husband. This time, perhaps we could both get what we wished for. I tried to calm my excitement, then put on my face mask and hat, took the company access card he had given me earlier, and quietly made my way to his office without alerting anyone. If someone noticed and informed him beforehand, the surprise wouldn't be complete. Just as I was about to push the door open, I noticed it was already slightly ajar. Peering through the gap, I saw Tang Shen and Song Su standing by the floor, ceiling window, their backs turned to me as if they were talking. Song Su was his close friend. They had known each other since childhood and shared a deep bond. He was also acquainted with me. I was about to enter when I heard Song Su speak. Tang, how much longer do you plan to keep up this act? Hearing those words, my steps faltered, and my hand froze mid-air before knocking. For some reason, I had a sinking feeling. As for Tang Shen, he stood there with his head lowered, holding a photo frame in his hands, lost in thought for a long while. Finally, he turned to Song Su, his voice icy. Do you think I've gone soft? Song Su remained silent, but Tang Shen let out a derisive laugh, shaking his head to himself. No, Feng Yan was my brother. Because of her, he ended up in prison and lost his life there. The only reason I'm playing nice with her now is that she hasn't completely fallen for me yet. When the day comes that she truly loves me. He seemed to hesitate, but meeting his friend's gaze, he chose to speak firmly. He said, on that day, I'll personally send her to hell, make her pay with her life for Feng Yan. Feng Yan Liang is a pain I'll never shake off in this lifetime. Even now, just hearing that name makes me tremble uncontrollably, nauseous with disgust. Mentioning Feng Yan Liang brings back that nightmare from 3 years ago. Back then, I had just graduated from university. I'd saved up some money and went on that long, dreamed of trip to Yinzhou, a spur of the moment journey. That day, I stayed out very late before dragging my exhausted body back to the hotel. But just as I swiped my keycard to open the door, before I could step inside, a sudden commotion erupted behind me. I didn't even have time to react. The next moment, a strange man appeared out of nowhere. He clamped a hand over my mouth, wrapped his arms around me, and despite my desperate struggles, pulled me into the room with him before swiftly shutting the door. From the hallway, it sounded like someone was chasing him. Given the late hour and a stranger forcing his way into my room, I was terrified. He seemed completely out of his mind at the time. When he sensed I was trying to escape, he tightened his grip, pinning my arms to render me immobile. He claimed he wasn't a bad person. He said he'd been framed by enemies and dosed with something aphrodisiac, forcing him to take refuge in my room temporarily. But I couldn't speak. His hand remained firmly pressed over my mouth. Even when I bit his palm until it bled profusely, he refused to let go. He even said I was feisty and heartless, unwilling to save him from his current peril. Then, his body grew even hotter. His lips slid down from my cheek, finally biting my collarbone before he completely disregarded my will and carried me straight to the bed. The strength disparity between grown men and women is truly vast. I couldn't move. and his strength was overwhelming. With my mouth muffled and hands restrained, I could only stare hopelessly at the ceiling, praying for it all to end quickly. When it was over, he kissed the corner of my lips in satisfaction. Then he said to me, "My name is Fengmin Liang. I'm truly sorry for what happened today, but rest assured, I will take responsibility for you." But I didn't know him. No matter how handsome he was, no matter how sincere his apology, he still violated me against my will. So, Fengmin Liang is a rapist. I was both terrified and furious. I didn't care about his so-called responsibility. I just wanted him to pay for what he did. So, while he slept with his eyes closed, I quickly called the police. The hallway video proves it. I was forcibly dragged into the room by him, and since we were strangers, I resisted fiercely throughout the intense struggle last night, leaving many items in the room shattered. Even guests in the neighboring rooms complained about the loud commotion, saying it sounded like a violent fight. In short, the evidence is irrefutable, leaving him no room for denial. In the end, Fengmin Liang was sentenced to several years in prison. The incident caused an uproar online. Some guests staying at the hotel that day even secretly took photos of Fengmin Liang and me, which spread everywhere on the internet. I assumed everyone would condemn Fengmin Liang, but ridiculously, after the initial wave of sympathy, someone exposed Fengmin Liang's background. It was revealed that he was a young master from a capital elite family. His family wielded immense power and influence, and he himself was strikingly handsome. On top of that, he publicly declared he was willing to take responsibility for me. So, many people turned on me, calling me blind. They said I threw away a golden opportunity to marry into a wealthy family by choosing to call the police instead. Some also said that Fengmin Liang was handsome and wealthy, so spending the night with him must have been quite pleasant. If it were them, they wouldn't have called the police but would have clung to him instead. This scenario was just like the first encounter between the leads in an overbearing CEO romance novel. Ideally, I'd even be pregnant, flee with the baby, and then watch the CEO chase love to the end before marrying into a wealthy family and living happily ever after. They said this was the script I should have followed. Not like now, making such a fuss just for a pitiful shred of justice. Others claimed he was also a victim, drugged and out of his mind. They said I hadn't pushed him out of the room firmly enough, leading to the tragedy, so I shared the blame. In short, countless people curse me, hiding behind screens and masks, stabbing me freely with their words. They're both adults. Who knows if she was secretly thrilled and just playing hard to get? What decent girl stays in a hotel? She was probably meeting some man at night. These two comments garnered over 1 million likes, even though they made no sense at all. After Fengmin Liang was imprisoned, I fell seriously ill for 3 years due to the cyberbullying. My parents cared deeply for me, but they didn't dare take me back to our hometown. The scandal had spread too widely online, so relatives and acquaintances there naturally knew about it. And the whispers and judgment from those familiar faces were what truly made me lose hope in living. I was like a stray dog, filthy, unable to go home, and unfit to stand in the sunlight. And yes, I did attempt suicide. I even jumped from a building. It wasn't until I learned that everything online had been orchestrated by Fengmin Liang's family to take revenge on me that I finally abandoned the thought of ending my life. The more they wanted me dead, the more determined I was to survive. Clutching on to that resolve, I endured for 3 years. And then I met Tang Lanshen. That day, I went to the hospital for a follow-up exam, was recognized, and once again became the subject of hushed gossip when a crowd began closing in on me. It was Tang Lanshen who stepped in and helped. He took me away from the hospital and, knowing I was afraid, didn't lead me to secluded places. Instead, he gave me a face mask and hat, let me stay in the shopping mall, and then call my parents. This was our first meeting, gentle and polite, maintaining a proper distance between us. Later, we met again at the hospital. He said a family member was ill, so he often came to accompany them. Thus, we officially got to know each other. Gentle and considerate, he gradually became part of my life. My initial wariness toward him faded, and I genuinely began to see him as a friend. Our chats grew more frequent, We met for meals, and eventually, I found myself falling for him. He helped me out of my gloom and even promised me a future, swearing he'd never let me down. Under his care, I slowly grew more cheerful and finally stopped having nightmares every night. So, when I found out I was pregnant, I was truly happy. I thought heaven still favored me, giving me a chance to start anew. He kept reassuring me this wasn't my fault, until today, when I heard those words from his own lips and realized how utterly laughable it all was. Thoughts ebbed and flowed like tides, and I was already in tears. Through the crack in the door, I looked at Tinglan Shin again. He had now raised the photo in his hand, and I could clearly see the smiles of him and Fengmian Liang in the picture. The two stood shoulder to shoulder on the basketball court, radiant with youthful energy. In the past, I had vaguely felt that Tinglan Shin's eyes resembled someone's, but my mind had deliberately avoided recalling Fengmian Liang's appearance. So it only felt familiar, yet I couldn't quite place it. Or perhaps I simply didn't want to think about it at all. I just never expected they were actually brothers. Even more unexpected was that he wanted to push me into hell. I don't know how I made it home. My entire body was ice, cold, chilled to the bone. Despite the bright sunny day, the sky suddenly darkened, and a downpour began. By the time I got home, I was completely drenched. The aunt who took care of me hurried over with a towel to dry my hair. I avoided her touch, took another day off for her, then locked myself at home. Tinglan Shin sometimes worked from home, so his study was filled with documents. He had mentioned to me before that those files were crucial. If they fell into the wrong hands, they could deal a fatal blow to the company. So, I never entered his study or touched any of his files. But now, I opened that door. Perhaps he trusted me too much, believing I would never step inside, which was why his photo with Fengmian Liang was boldly displayed on the side. There was a photo and an incense burner. The photo was black and white, and the incense burner held the remnants of burnt out sticks. Beside them lay a file. Inside were photos of me from childhood to adulthood, records of where I'd been and what I'd done. Even casual remarks I'd made during school about the type of boys I liked were meticulously documented. No wonder Tinglan Shin fit my preferences so perfectly. Beneath all these, the sheet at the very bottom contained information about Fengmian Liang. After he was sent to prison, the rumors outside drove me to such despair that I couldn't bear to learn anything more about him. It wasn't until much later that I learned Fengmian Liang had died. He died in prison during a fight. His head slammed against the wall, snapping his neck, killing him instantly. The paper depicted Fengmian Liang's gruesome death, his eyes wide open as if staring straight at me through the page. I feared him, but I didn't regret a thing. If given another chance, I would still pick up the phone and call the police. At the bottom of that page, a single line was written: Fengmian, your brother will avenge you. I will never let Wu Yuani go, and I will never waver. It was Tinglan Shin's handwriting, scrawled in red ballpoint ink, each stroke pressed with desperate force. The last 5 words had been traced over again and again, as if constantly reminding herself to steel her resolve, to never show me any mercy. Suddenly, a wave of nausea hit me. I covered my mouth and rushed into the study's bathroom. After vomiting violently, my phone rang in my pocket. It was a message from Tinglan Shin. Sweetheart, the company is a bit busy today. I have to make an unexpected business trip to another province. I'll be back tomorrow. Be good at home. Remember to eat well and sleep well. Okay? Today, August 12th. Had I not seen that document, I might have thought the date was just another ordinary day. But fatefully, this was the day Fengmian Liang died in prison. In a daze, I suddenly recalled the years I'd spent with Tinglan Shin. He rarely traveled for work, except every year on August 12th, when he would inevitably leave on a business trip. Upon returning, his mood would turn somber, avoiding my gaze as he locked himself in the study. Now, I understood. This was the anniversary of his brother's death, and he hated me for it. I couldn't help but close my eyes. I thought I had finally found light, only to realize it was yet another hell. The man I deeply loved was the brother of that former demon, pretending to be an angel by my side, only to drag me back into hell and ensure my eternal damnation. Tinglan Shen, why would you do this to me? Uncontrollable despair and pain transformed into rage and hatred. In that moment, no one can treat me like this. Tinglan Shen, you want revenge against me? I slowly opened my eyes, staring at the crumpled pregnancy test slip in my hand and the confidential documents on the table, enough to ruin his entire company. And these files alone were enough to deal a fatal blow to his company. Then let me strike first. Before he does, I restored the study to its original state, leaving no trace of my presence. As for this pregnancy test slip in my hand, after a moment of thought, I tore it up, tossed it into the toilet, and watched it flush away into the sewers. Then, I scheduled another check, up at a different hospital a month in advance. In a month's time, the grievances between Tinglan Shen and I should be completely settled. By the evening of the second day, Tinglan Shen called me, saying he was waiting in the garage to take me out for dinner. I agreed, quickly got ready, and followed him to the hotel. When we entered the private room, Sang-Soo and Yan Shen were chatting. Hearing the commotion, Yan turned her head, her gaze landing on my face. The smile that had just graced her lips instantly vanished as she glared at me with a cold expression and rolled her eyes. Yan Shen was Tinglan Shen's younger sister. I had met her a few times before, but she never liked me, and I simply assumed we weren't fated to get along. Now that I think about it, Fengmian Liang must have been her second brother. And since they believed I was responsible for Fengmian Liang's death, the whole family had united against me. The rumors from before hadn't driven me to despair, so now they resorted to these underhanded, disgusting tactics to break me completely. Unfortunately for them, they miscalculated. I ignored Yan Shen, simply sitting in my chair and calmly finishing the meal. Sang-Soo and Yan Shen must have been childhood sweethearts. There was mutual interest, but neither had confessed their feelings. As both a brother and a friend, Tinglan Shen played the matchmaker in between. Even today's dinner gathering was likely arranged specifically for their budding romance. For me, this meal was utterly flavorless. After finishing, as dusk settled, Shen Yan suggested taking a stroll together by the riverside. Naturally, Sang-Soo and Tinglan Shen wouldn't refuse. The four of us walked in a row, with Shen Yan chattering nonstop along the way. Whenever her gaze met mine, she couldn't resist sneering a few words. Wu Yuani, our Shen family has many rules. My brother has always been outstanding, and the women who like him are all perfect. Shen Yan deliberately emphasized the word perfect with biting clarity. The incident from 3 years ago had left an indelible mark on my heart, so those 2 words felt like nothing but blatant mockery to me. In the past, Shen Yan would say similar things, eager to see me suffer, while Tinglan Shen would half-heartedly tell her to stop. Looking back now, if Tinglan Shen had truly cared about me, how could he not have seriously warned his sister never to touch this scar of mine? In the end, one plays the good cop, the other the bad cop, a family of actors. In the past, I never engaged, leaving the stage to Tinglan Shen, but this time, I deliberately stepped in front of Yan Shen before he could start scolding. Perfect? If you want to mock me, you might as well say it outright. For most girls, the humiliation brought by the word rape is so unbearable that they'd rather bury themselves under a blanket, cutting off all contact with the outside world. Trembling in fear, I was no different, always avoiding the topic, unwilling to mention it. But now, I stared at the brother and sister of the perpetrator, who were actually using this to mock me. It was utterly ridiculous, so I couldn't help but laugh, doubled over, eyes red with mirth. Tinglan Shen's expression shifted, and he reached out to steady me, but I pushed him away and grabbed Yan Shen's wrist instead. Every time you see me, you always intentionally or unintentionally remind me of what happened 3 years ago. What? Are you that curious about Fengmian Liang? Hearing me say this name so bluntly, the other 3 people present were stunned, and Tinglan Shen clenched his fists, his expression one of suppressed fury. I pretended not to notice and continued staring at Shen Yan in front of me. Then today, I'll tell you, Fengmian Liang is a scumbag. Anyone who does such things without a woman's consent is a scumbag. Shen Yinyan was hot, tempered, and couldn't keep things to herself. So the moment she heard me bad-mouthing Feng Yanliang, she couldn't help but flare up. She immediately retorted, "Brother, Feng Yanliang is not a scumbag." I sneered, my gaze fixed on her face, and pressed on. "A rapist isn't a scumbag? Shen Yanyan, since when did you become so forgiving, so lenient toward rapists?" Shen Yanyan wanted to argue further, but after stammering for a long time, she couldn't utter a single word. "Yuani, stop. Let's keep walking." Tinglan Shun's voice was muffled, clearly displeased but forcing himself to appear calm, pretending not to notice. I turned and asked him, "Who do you think is right, me or her?" At this moment, the question was practically a death trap, so he remained silent for a long time before finally sighing helplessly, feigning concern as he reached out to place a hand on my shoulder. But before he could act, a drunken man stumbled up from the roadside grass, swaying toward Yanyan Shun, though barely coherent. He could still distinguish between men and women. He lunged straight at Yanyan Shun, who was only wearing a short skirt that day, startling her into a scream as she flailed her hands to push him away. The drunkard leered, roughly groping her thigh. He spewed vulgarities, even shifting the blame. "You're wearing such a short skirt and wandering around at night. Isn't this just asking to be touched? You're insane. Get the hell away from me." Shen Yanyan cursed angrily. After realizing what happened, Tinglan Shun and Song Su quickly pulled the drunkard away, with Tinglan Shun even kicking him to the ground before landing several more punches. "How dare you lay a hand on my sister? You're asking for death." Shen Yanyan hid behind Song Su, her eyes brimming with tears. "Brother, teach him a lesson. Teach him a good one," like a torrential downpour. Fists rained upon the drunken brute. Other pedestrians who had witnessed the entire scene averted their eyes in unison, some even muttering as they passed by. "Hit him a few more times. Harder." Everyone loathed such despicable people with a passion. Yet, I stood by and laughed. "Wu Yuani, how can you laugh when I'm being bullied? You're truly heartless." Shen Yanyan stomped her feet in fury. I looked at her, then glanced at the still, beaten drunken brute. "Why can't I laugh? Shen Yanyan, you can feel such strong sympathy for a rapist, yet when this drunkard merely groped you twice, how did you fly into such a shameful rage?" I threw her own words back at her. She froze, then shook her head. "No, this is different," I retorted swiftly. "How is it different? You don't know this man. He lunged at you trying to assault you, and you rightfully felt violated. Naturally, there's nothing wrong with that. So, you'd let your brother beat him, even if he were beaten to death. You wouldn't feel an ounce of pity or remorse, would you?" I paused, my gaze shifting to Tinglan Shen. His earlier fury had vanished, his raised fist now frozen mid-air, as if he were listening to my words, lost in thought, giving the drunken brute just enough time to scramble up from the ground, grit his teeth, and grope Tinglan Shun's face one last time before fleeing with a muttered, "Not bad. This one's even prettier than the girl." Tinglan Shun wiped his face vigorously with his hand, as if scrubbing off something repulsive, desperate to avoid any trace of it. He turned his head, his gaze meeting mine, and I continued, "So, you couldn't stand being touched just once. Your brother just had his face touched by that man, and the look in his eyes was practically murderous. 3 years ago, I went on a trip full of joy, only for a stranger to force himself on me despite my resistance. Shouldn't I hate him? Shouldn't I call him a bastard?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions, but my eyes still reddened despite my efforts. I marched straight up to Tinglan Shun and demanded, "Tell me, the moment you saw your sister being harassed just now, did you feel hatred?" He froze, his expression unreadably complex, as if struck by some realization. I rushed up to Shen Yanyan again and asked her, "You can't stand being touched on the leg just once. If it had been you who experienced that incident 3 years ago, with a man you didn't know, even if he looked like a celestial being, you'd have been terrified, wouldn't you? So, tell me, Shen Yanyan, don't you hate him? Tell me, isn't Feng Yan Liang truly a scoundrel?" Perhaps I was too agitated, because even these drama-loving siblings fell into silence. Instead, it was Song-soo beside me, who calmly adjusted his glasses and said in a measured tone, "But Fungmin Leong isn't some street thug. Setting that incident aside, he's successful, handsome, comes from a wealthy family, and what?" I turned to face Song-soo, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Song-soo, then I wish you never have a daughter in this lifetime. If such a thing ever happens, even if your daughter dislikes him or utterly despises him, you must still cheerfully say those words just as you did today. Tell your daughter not to be angry, and don't you dare be angry for her either. You must happily make her accept it all, because that man is successful, handsome, and comes from a wealthy family, isn't he?" That night, the three people who had schemed against me with so many thoughts in mind all fell silent. Perhaps it's because the knife hasn't cut them, so they don't feel the pain. But now that they've been cut, even if just slightly, they're furious. Looking back at all their self-righteous accusations against me, they'll realize how laughable they once were. A rapist has nothing to do with his looks or family background. No matter how successful someone is, if they do such a thing, they're scum. No matter how ordinary someone is, if they uphold their principles, they're a good person. The line between a man and a beast is never drawn by appearance or wealth. It's drawn by their actions. Since that day, there's been a hint of conflict in Tinglan Shun's gaze whenever he looks at me, perhaps setting aside blood ties. He also knows Fungmin Liang's actions were fundamentally wrong. But when people can't sever blood relations, they choose to blind themselves and shift all blame onto others. Like when a child falls, grandparents curse the table or floor for hurting their precious one. Yet the table never moved. The floor is cemented in place. The one who moved was the restless child, wasn't it? But their greatest sin was letting prejudice cloud their judgment, finding no logic, yet seeking vengeance against me. I did nothing wrong. Calling the police wasn't wrong. Sending Fungmin Leong to prison wasn't wrong. The fault lies with them, unreasonable and blind to justice. I haven't forgotten my purpose. I deliberately brought this up to make them reconsider who truly bears the blame. That night, Tinglan Shun and I lay in bed, perhaps haunted by the Riverside incident. He tossed and turned, seemingly unable to sleep. I couldn't sleep either. I simply sat up, but didn't turn on the light, gazing at him beside me in the dim moonlight. "Tinglan, is something troubling you?" Perhaps at night, people's defenses are lower, and emotions become more volatile. So Tinglan Shen also sat up, leaning against the headboard with me. He seemed to want to say something, but after circling around, he ultimately couldn't voice what he originally intended. Instead, he asked me, "Yuani, after we get married, let's have a daughter." I shook my head, which surprised him, and he asked why. I told him, "I'm afraid you won't be able to protect her well." He froze, immediately retorting, "How could that be? I would give my life to protect my daughter." I laughed, a cold laugh. Yes, fathers would all give their lives to protect their daughters. That year when something happened to me, my dad was the same, staying by my side without rest, running between the hospital and the police station. He just wanted justice for his daughter, but the other side used their power to try to bury the matter. My parents' hair turned white before they finally secured justice. My voice trembled slightly as I quickly grabbed Tinglan Shun's hand. I told him, "If you ever have a daughter in the future, you must protect her. Never let her experience what I went through. Even if the man is perfect, if your daughter doesn't like him, she'll be scared. She'll cry, just like Yin. It would break your heart. It would break any parent's heart." As he listened to me, Tinglan Shun's body trembled faintly. Finally, he suddenly reached out and pulled me into a tight embrace. That night, Tinglan Shun didn't sleep a wink. In the days that followed, Tinglan Shun treated me exceptionally well. I could see the struggle in his eyes. Over these years, I truly loved him and did everything for him, just as he did for me, putting on an act, pretending to care about what I said. Perhaps, in the beginning, his heart was filled with nothing but hatred. But after so much time together, through countless days and nights, I could see it in his eyes. He had fallen for me. That's why Song-soo asked him that question in the office. That's precisely why I must make him empathize, make him ache for me, make him fall utterly in love with me. He wants to toy with my emotions to get his revenge. Naturally, I'll return the favor, but I can't rely on this ridiculous notion of love alone to exact my full vengeance. Love is too fleeting, too insubstantial, nothingness. That is the perfect punishment for Tinglan Shen, who has looked down on everyone since the day he was born. In these past few days, he's been showering me with tenderness. Each time, I take countless photos and post them on my social media. I have Yin Yin Shun on WeChat, so she's definitely seeing all these lovey-dovey posts. Her earlier moment of reflection doesn't mean she's had an epiphany. Blood ties won't stop her from hating me as fiercely as ever. Seeing these photos is bound to infuriate her. If she can see them, then her mother, standing behind her, can too. The reason Feng Yan Liang carries his mother's surname is because Tinglan Shen's mother, as the only daughter, needed an heir for her family line. Thus, among the 2 sons and 1 daughter, the eldest son followed his father's career path, while the second son took his mother's surname and inherited her family's business. It was precisely because of this that I could never have connected these 2 individuals with different surnames before that incident in the office. As for Mrs. Shen, she always showed extra affection toward her younger son, who still bore her surname. 5 nights later, I couldn't sleep, or perhaps, ever since I learned the whole truth. I had been suffering from insomnia every night, so when the phone rang, I snapped awake instantly, but pretended to be fast asleep, listening as Tinglan Shen beside me cautiously answered the call, got out of bed, and stood by the balcony. His back was turned to me, and the night was exceptionally quiet, so I could even hear the woman's voice on the other end of the line. Tinglan Shen, what exactly have you been doing these past few days? Feng Mian is your brother. That woman sent him to prison. You promised me, to spare my grief, that you'd return and find a way to deal with Wu Yuani, ensuring she suffers heartbreak and agony to ease the pain of losing my son. But recently, why has Yin Yan been telling me that you've been treating that woman better and better instead? She really is a fox spirit, first seducing my Feng Yan, and now she's got you hooked too. Don't you want to avenge your brother anymore? The woman on the other end of the line was furious, every word dripping with accusation. Tinglan Shen remained silent for a long time before finally speaking. Mom, a while ago, Yan Yan and I went out to eat. On the way, we ran into a drunk man who tried to grope her. I was furious and taught him a lesson. I'm talking about your brother, and you're bringing up some drunk? That man dared to harass your sister. I've already sent someone to deal with him. Hearing this, Tinglan Shen took a deep breath before replying. Yan Yan was just frightened, and we were already furious. But Yuani was truly violated 3 years ago. If Feng Yan weren't my brother, weren't your son, would we really believe he did nothing wrong? On the other end, Mother Shen immediately roared in outrage. Tinglan Shen, what exactly are you implying? Don't forget, this plan was your idea in the first place. Wasn't it you who swore to me that Feng Yan was your most beloved brother, who died at that woman's hands, and that you'd spare no effort to avenge him? Have you forgotten? Humph. Yan Yan is more useful than you. She was the one who came up with the idea to use online Yulin to avenge her brother back then. How come you're now protecting that vixen instead? Could it be that, after playing this game, you've actually developed feelings? Hearing this, Tinglan Shen immediately retorted, No, I haven't. But the person on the other end was too furious, hanging up right after saying those words. And so Tinglan Shen remained standing on the balcony, silent for a long time. As I watched his back, I struggled to suppress the hatred in my heart. The mastermind behind that vicious cyberbullying back then was actually Shen Yanyan. No, not just her. She proposed the idea, but those who actually carried out weren't just her. This entire family are the real culprits. I continued pretending to know nothing, but under the constant barrage of my affectionate social media posts, Mother Shen was growing impatient, so I rarely went out. Even when I did, I always took Tinglan Shen with me. After several near misses with accidents, he, being the protagonist who knew the whole truth, could easily guess who was behind them. Because of this, he specifically told me he needed to go home for a day, citing important matters. I agreed. When he returned, there was a fresh wound on his forehead, which he dismissed as an accidental bump. But if I had to guess, it looked more like something had been thrown at him. His arms were also covered in deep, bloody scratches, but I pretended not to notice. However, after that day, the accidents did stop. Everything seemed to return to how it was before. So I took the initiative and invited Ting-Lan-shan out on a date, not to some high-end restaurant, but to the secluded alleys of a quiet riverside town. That's why he was so surprised when those men with clubs showed up. Yet, he remained composed, carefully shielding me behind him before glaring at the men. Get the hell out. His tone made it clear he held no regard for them whatsoever. Perhaps he assumed his family's presence would deter them, that they'd never dare strike him. Unfortunately, this time, his calculations were doomed to fail. Yuan, don't be afraid. They definitely won't. Before Ting-Lan-shan could finish his reassurance, the lead man exchanged a glance with me and swiftly raised his club, aiming directly for Ting-Lan-shan's head. Ting-Lan, watch out! I shouted loudly while reaching out to pull him, attempting to swap places with him. Of course, not truly swapping, the man charging at us still had some distance to cover. In our struggle, Ting-Lan-shan froze briefly, only to see the club about to crash onto my head after our positions shifted. Unable to deflect the blow, he could only embrace me and switch places again. I moved with the force of his pull, and that rod ultimately landed on his shoulder. Ting-Lan-shan cried out in pain and immediately fell to his knees. Ting-Lan, I strained to redden my eyes, letting genuine worry flood my gaze. As those men continued advancing step by step, I threw myself entirely over Ting-Lan-shan, screaming hoarsely at them. If you want to hit someone, kill me first. Don't you dare touch Ting-Lan. Of course, they couldn't harm me. Just as the rod was raised, someone happened to pass by, phone in hand, claiming they'd already called the police. So those men panicked and fled in disarray. Afterward, Ting-Lan-shan and I both collapsed in the alley. I stared at him anxiously, my voice trembling with unmistakable tears. Ting-Lan, this is all my fault. I shouldn't have asked you to come out with me today. Tears splashed onto the back of his hand. He looked up at me, his expression deeply conflicted. Yuan, there were so many of them, and that rod was so thick. Yet, you didn't hesitate to throw yourself in front of me. Weren't you afraid you'd die by their hands? If it were the Wu Yuan of the past, she would have shaken her head firmly at this moment, because Ting-Lan-shan was her beloved, someone she would protect with her life. The present Wu Yuan would still shake her head firmly. I looked at him, my eyes filled with undisguised deep affection. Ting-Lan, we've been together for so long, deeply in love. So when danger came, I couldn't think of anything else. I was just afraid you'd get hurt. Even the slightest injury to you would break my heart. As I spoke, my fingers inadvertently brushed over his forehead, where a scar had only recently scabbed over. He shivered slightly at my touch. Then, a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Yes, even you would feel heartbroken for me, afraid I might get hurt even a little. He paused for a moment, then looked up in the direction where those people had left. But there are those who, knowing full well I might get hurt, still charge ahead recklessly, as if he couldn't continue. I didn't press further, instead opening my arms to give him a tight hug. A child starved of love always craves a warm embrace all the more. After that incident, Ting-Lan-shan had a fierce argument with her mother, right outside the company building, in front of many employees. They coincidentally met and engaged in a cryptic yet heated quarrel. The argument only grew more intense as it went on. Then they went upstairs, entered the office, closed the door, and continued their fight. Mrs. Shun had tried many ways to harm me, but in her heart, Feng Mianliang, her son who bore her surname, was far more important than her other two children. When love is unevenly distributed, the neglected will lash out in hysteria, even if the accused vehemently denies any wrongdoing. No matter how thoroughly they investigate, the clues would never lead back to me. Compared to the Shun and Liang families, I truly had no power of my own. However, in this vast capital, there were naturally more than just these two influential families with overwhelming authority. Some harbored grudges for years, itching to eliminate their rivals at the first opportunity. The feuds of wealthy families were beyond my involvement, but where there was hatred, those who shared it became my allies in that moment. Thus, someone would naturally erase all traces for me. The greater the rift between mother and son, the more it would impact the company, leaving it vulnerable to competitors. Corporate warfare is always dirty. I had already built a rapport with a female colleague in the company, so when news broke of Tinglan Shen arguing with his mother in the office, I arrived with a prepared lunchbox and waited outside. No matter how soundproof the office door was, it couldn't muffle their hysterics. Others had been ordered to stay away, but I wasn't part of the company. I was just bringing lunch to my boyfriend. It was all perfectly natural, and so I effortlessly learned the whole truth. I let the lunchbox drop, forced out tears, and feigned devastation as I descended the stairs to the floor below, facing employees craning their necks for gossip. I said nothing, just wept uncontrollably, heartbroken under their growing curiosity. I sobbed my way out of the building. I had driven myself there. Once in the car, I floored the accelerator all the way to the apartment parking lot. I dialed the number and called that person. Aside from the top secret documents kept in the study at home during these days, to avoid any mishaps, Tinglan Shun took me with him wherever he went. So I had also been to his company office. He had no commercial reservations against me. I seized every opportunity to photograph many other important materials. Then, today, I sent all of them to that person. He replied with a simple received and said, "Don't worry, as per our agreement, I will ensure the complete downfall of the Shun and Liang families, just as you wish. Decades, long business rivals, originally evenly matched, but with so many confidential documents in the opponent's hands, everything would change." Getting the response I wanted, I finally relaxed. Once home, I smashed many things in front of the housekeeper. My hysterical outburst must have been an ugly sight. Confused, the housekeeper could only call Tinglan Shun at work, and I used this chance to stash the new pregnancy test report I'd obtained 2 days earlier in the wardrobe. The suitcase under the cabinet had been packed and ready since early morning. Dragging my luggage behind me, I walked out of the apartment without a backward glance, ignoring the increasingly panicked looks from the housekeeper. I moved to another city, not particularly prosperous, but quiet and comfortable. Over the years, I had managed to save up a decent sum. Since my parents preferred tranquility, I found them another place to settle down. As for me, I went to the hospital alone. When I first learned of this child's existence, it was only a month old, so I gave myself a 1-month revenge plan. This way, I could complete my vengeance while minimizing harm to my health. At first, I had truly been overjoyed about this child because she was a symbol of love. But then I learned the truth, that this child would carry Fengyan Liang's blood in its veins. The other half of its blood would belong to the very people I despised. So I couldn't bring myself to be a noble mother. I didn't want to see it born, to look at a helplessly crying baby and tragically realize that its features would resemble its father, its uncle, its aunt. To me, that would be a nightmare. So from the moment I saw that document in the study, I made up my mind to terminate this pregnancy. But after what happened 3 years ago, I'd already been ill for 3 years, with my body's functions weakened. This time, after the procedure, I had to stay under observation in the hospital for a month before being cleared to leave. Lying in the hospital, I didn't dare tell my parents, only saying that Tinglan Shun and I had broken up and that I needed to go away to clear my head. In the hospital, I ran into a young girl. She couldn't have been very old, possibly still of school age. Clutching a pregnancy test slip, she trembled uncontrollably, sobbing. Her experience mirrored mine, but after my ordeal, terrified of pregnancy, I'd taken a handful of contraceptive pills at once and nearly suffered serious consequences. She hadn't taken any pills, and now she was pregnant. I asked her, "After something like this happens, why didn't you call the police?" She lowered her head. "Him. I don't know him. but I know he's powerful and influential. I'm scared, sis. He said he'd take responsibility, but I don't even know him, and I don't want him to. I was supposed to study abroad, but now there's a baby, and She looked at me, her gaze flickering away as if expecting me to scold her. I reached out and gently hugged her. Many girls don't dare to call the police when something like this happens, and that's not wrong. Even in this society that claims gender equality, women still face so many prejudices. So being afraid and wanting to escape, that's not wrong. But I want to tell you, our lack of courage has skewed society's perception. Like those CEO romance novels, where a one-night stand starts with such pain, yet everyone forgets the police exist. But in reality, love blooming from something like that almost never happens. So, I hope you think carefully about whether to give up your bright future for the sake of the child in your womb. I've said my piece. The choice is hers to make. Back in the hospital room, another patient was playing news on her phone. Wow, the world of the truly wealthy is beyond my comprehension. Her family member, peeling an apple for her, chimed in. What's the latest gossip? Oh, it's juicy. Remember that young, handsome man on the cover of the financial news Dad was watching at home? I told you he looked like an overbearing CEO straight out of a novel. Turns out, life really is imitating fiction. What happened? His company is huge, right? Loads of money. Well, he just abandoned it all. When reporters asked, he said his pregnant wife had gone missing. So even though the company was at a critical juncture, he had to drop everything to find her. Mom, isn't this straight out of a novel? Her mother shook her head, smiling. How do you know it's fiction coming to life? Maybe the man isn't so great, and that's why his wife ran off. By the way, what's his name? She didn't answer immediately, but kept scrolling through the news. Just as I was about to pull up the covers to sleep, I finally heard her say, "Oh, I think it's called Tinglan Shen." Besides the news about chasing his wife across the country, there was another piece. The Shun and Liang companies, due to the sudden disappearance of their CEOs and being in a critical period, had several major collaborations inexplicably leaked, along with many trade secrets mysteriously exposed. This led to severe issues within the companies, financial collapse, and numerous partnerships being terminated. Longtime rivals seized this opportunity to snatch up all the collaborations the two companies were forced to relinquish. In short, it was a death blow to the Shun and Liang families. The problems at the companies were so dire that Tinglan Shen, who had been chasing his wife across the country, was forced to return to the capital to fight desperately. By the time I recovered and returned to the capital, the Shun and Liang companies were already beyond saving. Their rivals, equally powerful and once evenly matched, had taken full advantage of the situation to crush Tinglan Shen completely. When I returned, Tinglan Shen had just declared bankruptcy. The Shen family was torn apart. As for Mrs. Shen, in a fit of rage, she coughed up blood and was hospitalized. The Song family turned their backs for profit, for the sake of family interests. Song Su planned an arranged marriage with another girl, but Shen Yanyan was too stubborn. She seized an opportunity during a meeting with him and injured him there, rendering him impotent. She said, "You promised you'd only marry me in this lifetime. Since you've gone back on your word, don't blame me." After that, the Song family was furious, and Shen Yanyan was imprisoned for assault. As for Tinglan Shen, the two of us met by chance at the riverside. He looked utterly defeated, and the moment he saw me, he rushed over. He grabbed my wrist, desperately explaining, "Yueni, listen to me. At first, I did want revenge on you, but after spending so much time together, I'm not heartless. How could I not like you? But Feng Mian's death left my mother and Yan Yan in agony, and I didn't know what to do. So, the blame had to fall on you to appease them. I wanted revenge, but I regretted it because no one else treated me like. I was the one who leaked your company's documents. As for your scheme against me, I actually knew about it long before that day." I cut him off directly, watching his slightly dazed expression before continuing, including that pregnancy test slip. The child did exist, but I had known about her existence a month earlier. Unfortunately, I didn't want you to be the father, so I terminated the pregnancy. Between you and me, there will never be any connection again." After speaking, I watched the fragile joy and affection in his eyes crumble piece by piece. He seemed unable to believe it. His gaze locked onto me as I gripped his wrist and slowly stepped back. Glancing at the pedestrians approaching along the riverside, I smiled at him. "Tinglan Shen, your love for me was tainted with schemes from the very beginning. So even if you ended up falling for me, I could never trust you because of it. I've always believed in repaying kindness and vengeance alike. I've already returned his emotional schemes in kind. But in life, one must always collect a little interest. So I let go, my body plummeting into the river like a bird with broken wings. And he, even if he didn't react in time, still reached out to grab me. If someone noticed and informed him beforehand, the surprise wouldn't be complete. As for me, I had prepared for this. Passers-by rushed to my rescue, and I only ended up choking on a few mouthfuls of water. But once I was pulled out, I immediately pointed at Tinglan Shen. My voice trembled. You, why did you push me?" The incident from 3 years ago was thrust back into the trending topics, including the identities of Tinglan Shen and Fengyan Liang. But this time, there was no deliberate manipulation by anyone. It was purely a discussion about women's safety. As for Tinglan Shen, after hearing my words, aside from his initial shock, he closed his eyes and said, "As you wish." And then he was taken away too. Before he was taken, he said one last thing to me. "Yuani, I know you hate me, so as you wish, as long as it makes you happy. After this, our grudges will be settled. Once I'm out, I'll pursue you again, since you loved me so deeply once. I'm confident I can make you fall for me again." His confidence only amused me. As for this chasing love to the end drama, it would never succeed with me. I loathed Fengyan Liang and despised Tinglan Shen for scheming against me. So even in death, I could never love him again. Never fall for someone who once sought to hurt you. Now, I only want to love myself well.